Hey everybody, how's it going? So I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about synergists. Now a synergist is a muscle that assists another muscle to do its job. Now you know that when we move, movements are patterns. They're patterns of movement that we've learned through growing up, through learning how to run, learning how to walk, learning how to throw, learning how to do small intricate movements like writing, throwing darts, playing snooker, pool, whatever. These are all movements that we've learned, and these are all patterns that we've ingrained through practice. Now, the time that we spend practicing something is very much the same as the time spent not practicing something. So what I mean by that is, if the same way of practicing and learning something good, something that's a skill, something like running or something like throwing, is learned through performing that skill over and over and over, or that movement pattern over and over and over again, the same way we can learn to do things that are not so good. So for example, if we spent however many years of our life sitting with our legs crossed, we sit down on the ground with our legs crossed, those are patterns that we teach our body to get into. And those are patterns of movement or non-movement that we adapt to. Now, nothing works in isolation. So even when I'm, for example, picking up a cup of coffee, I've got a load of things that are going on there in order for my arm to be outside of essentially my cylinder. So for me to reach out, I've got maybe, 12 pounds of my body weight here outside of my cylinder. So there's muscles on my back that have to tension so that I don't fall forwards. I've got muscles on my front that have to tension because I have to rotate to pick up whatever it is, or to reach out to grab whatever it is. I then have to pick it up, grip it, I then have to move it towards me, and I have to, if I'm picking up a cup of coffee or a glass of water or something else, I don't want to spill it, and that takes practice. So what I'm trying to say here is that movements are patterns, and they're coordinated patterns. And we have muscles that are working to assist other muscles in doing their job. Now, if you think about running is a gross motor movement. It's a gross motor pattern. And when I run, I have to coordinate all of my movements to work together. Now, at every part of the gait cycle, when my foot hits the ground, for example, there's a load of things that have to happen in order for me not to collapse to the ground, okay? There's a load of muscles that have to contract to hold me up so that I can then lift my heel, pull my knee back, pull my leg back, and step forwards without collapsing to the ground. Now, there's a load of levers that have muscles attached, or a load of bones that have muscles attached to them, and they have all sorts of fascial connections to the whole of the rest of the joint, the other bones. And for example, if I'm going to just take a step forwards, I've created a lever system here by taking this leg off the ground. So just to pick this leg up is a whole lever system. So this group of muscles here have to contract, this group of muscles here have to contract in order for this and all of this weight to hang over nothing, because there's nothing supporting it here. So what is supporting it? It's a whole system of muscle contractions going across my back, down the side of my leg, across the back of my leg, all the way down to my foot, to my big toe, or underneath the foot to my toes. Now, if one muscle is not doing its job, it's going to cause the other muscles in that pattern to overwork. So think about this. In order for me to take a step forwards, all of the muscles underneath my foot that go past my ankle have to contract for my foot to do that. Then the calf muscle and all of the associated muscles within the calf muscle have to contract to lift the heel up. Then all of the muscles up the back of my leg, the hamstrings, the adductors have to fire to turn my leg slightly inwards and pull it backwards. Then you've got your glute, and you've got all the muscles on the outside of the hip that have to lift this side up to create that swing leg. Then I've got all of my rotator muscles that have to turn my torso, and I've got a load of muscles that attach from the back of my head all the way down to my pelvis, along each individual vertebrae. I've got my shoulder muscles that have to work, my arm muscles that have to work. All of those muscles have to work, and it's a whole sequence, a whole series of muscle contractions. Now, if we think about specifically the leg here, my calf and my hamstring, they work together, but they actually work against each other, because when my calf lifts my heel up, it's pushing my knee in a forwards-upwards direction. So if I lift my heel to there, my knee's going forwards. You can see that it's moving forwards. Now, if my hamstring doesn't contract at the same time or very quickly afterwards, then my knee is just going to travel forwards and my knee's going to go downwards direction afterwards. So I have to contract my calf, then I have to contract my hamstring, then my adductors and my glute last. Okay? Now, if getting that heel off the ground requires the most amount of effort, because I've got to get my body weight up, okay, the whole of my body weight up, if my hamstring isn't helping to pull the leg backwards at the same time, then the calf is really going to have to do a huge amount of work. So for anyone who's got any calf issues going on, okay, and maybe you got plantar fasciitis, maybe you got shin splints, these muscles in the back of the leg, the calf, the hamstring, the adductors, and then into the glute, and there's a load of other muscles there that cross the back of the knee and they wrap around, they have to work together. Now, if there's a situation where some of them aren't doing their job, then we've got a situation where other muscles are having to do too much work. Now, if you think about a road being dug up by a load of construction workers, if you had one person trying to dig up a whole section of road, that's going to be a lot of work. That person is going to get really tired. If you had two people doing the work, all of a sudden the work's getting shared 50-50. If you had three people doing the work, 33.33%, four people doing the work, 25% each, and so on and so on and so on. So they're sharing the load, and that's the job of our muscles in the sequence, in the movement pattern, is to share the load. So think about that when you're thinking about movement, and especially for us, we're thinking about running. The muscles have to share the load. Okay, if you've got a muscle, like I said, that's not doing its job, then you're forcing another muscle to do more work. Okay, so to find out whether muscles are really not doing their job very well, all you got to do is get in there with a foam roller or a baseball or a softball or a tennis ball or PVC pipe or whatever. And if it hurts, if it feels tight, and you'll know if it feels tight because you'll have been saying for the last however many weeks and months and maybe even years, oh, my calves are tight, oh, my hamstrings are tight. Those two work together. Oh, I've got shin splints, I've got tight quads. Again, those two work together, or those groups work together in the movements. Okay? So think about the synergists, the muscles that help the other muscles out. Okay? And like I say, if you've got one that's tight, one that's overworking, you've got another one that's probably tight long, and it's probably underworking because it can't do its job, it can't help out. Okay, so think about that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little series of words together, or little sentences together to make up some sequences and some synergists and which muscles work together, so that you can kind of like look around your body and look around your legs, around your joints, specifically your pelvis, your obliques, your adductors, your hamstrings as well. These muscles are very likely in a bit of a bad way, and they're not doing their job, they're not helping out, so they're forcing other muscles to overwork. Okay? Talk to you soon. Any questions? Post them below.